What's up, everybody? My name is Cody Yard, and I am the host of The Buzz with the Fuzz. It's Apple Valley's Police Department podcast. We're going to do some fun stuff with this thing. We're going to do chatting with the chief. We're going to do some Q&As, and we're going to do some longer format podcasts where we sit down with folks from specialty units, and you guys get to learn about who they are and what they do. I got my start in journalism back in 2002 as a combat correspondent in the United States Marine Corps. Really excited to be the host of this podcast here with the police department, and I'm really looking forward to bringing you some new fun facts and information that you might not know about Apple Valley's police department. So stick around, buckle up, and let's have some fun. All right, thanks for joining us again here, folks. This is Cody with The Buzz with the Fuzz, and today my guest is Sergeant Adam Keeler. Adam, would you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, Sergeant Adam Keeler. I've been with the department for 18, well, actually I've been a police officer here for 18 and a half years, sergeant for about just over 9 years. Currently the Sergeant of Investigations here at Apple Valley.
Cool. What did you do before you became the investigative sergeant?
In the summer of 21 is when I was awarded the opportunity to become Sergeant of Investigations. Prior to that, I was sergeant in patrol, worked every shift from about 2015 through 2021, so about 6 years. And then, prior to that was mostly on patrol for my career as a police officer here in Apple Valley.
Yeah. And you were also a SWAT operator?
So yeah, a little bit more about my background. I was a SWAT operator for 6 years. I did a use of force, firearms instruction to FTO, field training officer, active shooter stuff, worked with the schools. So did a lot of different things. One thing I never did that I wanted the opportunity was doing investigations. At Apple Valley here, we have 2 core detectives, and then we have 3 rotating positions, one of them being a 1-year rotation. I put in for that a couple times. Fortunately, didn't get it, which was okay, but that's always something that interests me. So having the opportunity to be the detective sergeant was a good opportunity for me.
Yeah, and gives you a completely different perspective.
Absolutely.
In investigations as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very cool. So when you put in for that, how was the process to put in for the investigative sergeant spot? Sure.
So with Apple Valley, we have 10. We now have 10 sergeants. At the time, we just added an additional sergeant. I think it was last year, but typically we have 9 sergeants. Now 10, like I said. 8 of those are assigned to patrol, working different patrol shifts. The only 2 real opportunities for sergeants to do something besides patrol are the community impact unit and the investigative sergeant. And those are both rotational positions, both 3 years. For me, after being on patrol for 6 years, felt like I kind of, as a sergeant, as a supervisor, kind of felt like I know what I was doing for the most part, and I kind of wanted to try something different. So the process was you put in for, obviously, submit your resume, cover letter, that kind of stuff, and then an interview. At that time, it was an interview with command staff and actually a couple different command staff from different departments. So asking a variety of topics, just from, leadership style, ideas you have for the detective unit, what you like about it, what you don't, what you might change, some of those different stuff.
I guess I didn't realize that they had folks from outside agencies come in.
It was this. I just recently interviewed again. I put back in for the position last week was the interview. I've enjoyed my time in investigations. Yeah. If you had to hold me down and force me to tell the truth, I think I like patrol just a little bit better. But I patrol guy at heart. The biggest reason I put back in for investigations was I like the people I work with. I like the work. And just the schedule. I mean, not having to work weekends and the ages that my kids are at right now, being able to coach them and do some of that stuff outside of work. Yeah. It's a little bit easier to do when you're not in patrol from a schedule standpoint, even though our patrol schedule is a pretty good schedule in my opinion. Anyway, that's a long way of me saying we did an interview last week and it was just with command staff. So I wasn't selected, which I'm totally okay with. And it's my view that, kind of like I said earlier, we have 10 sergeants. There's only so many opportunities to do different stuff besides patrol. So the new person that was selected, Dave Fry, will do a great job. Happy for him, and I'm actually excited about going back to patrol. So I have about 6 more months at the end of January, so I'm looking forward to just kind of wrapping up my time up there, but also excited for patrol because it's been 3 years.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. It'd be interesting to get back to the road.
for sure.
Especially since with the restructure of how we've kind of handled those administrative responsibilities. Sergeant Wolf has the firearm stuff going on. He's pretty wrapped up in that. But a lot of the others, the patrol sergeants are getting out, going to calls and
Absolutely. And
so.
I look at it too, like I still enjoy, we'll probably get into this, but the people I supervise now are they're all experienced. They've all been detectives. They not only have been cops for a while, but they've been detectives for a while. So I don't do a whole lot of mentoring or coaching at this point with those guys, but we have such a young, new patrol staff.
Yeah.
And to be frank with you, a lot of them I don't know real well because I haven't worked with them.
Yeah,
so
you just don't see them because they're...
Exactly. So just getting to know those people better, and then just we've all been there where we're young and can always be learning. So I still enjoy doing kind of that coaching, teaching stuff on the patrol side of things. So, and to your point, before I went upstairs to investigations, I was unfortunately in the office a lot as a sergeant because I was doing our schedule at the time, and then I was doing the FTO program too. So I am excited to kind of have a little bit less of that responsibility when I come back to the road and just, like you said, be able to get out and go on calls and work with some of the new folks that I haven't worked with before and do some of that. So
let's talk about your crew upstairs.
Sure.
'Cause you do have a really good core group of investigators up there. And especially this summer was you got the luxury of adding the school resource officers as well, which was something if I remember correctly, April, M-Key, was an investigator last year with you guys.
Correct.
But this year you also included the other two SROs.
That's correct.
How did that impact the workload upstairs for the summer? Was that helpful? Was that...
It was super helpful. Fortunately, I'm going to knock on wood here. I mean, it's after Labor Day, so I guess summer's officially over, but it wasn't too crazy of a summer. Just in my 3 years up there, summer usually is a busier time for everybody, whether it's patrol or investigations, just more going on. It wasn't too crazy, but I think just being able to give cases out to 3 more people up there for the summer was super helpful. Plus, I think it was more beneficial for those 3 SROs. Not that, I mean, they've both been in there, or I'm sorry, all 3 of them have been in their roles for a couple of years now, but just being able to kind of see some more in-depth cases, work stuff, and then also be in that environment where they can bounce stuff off other people and just kind of get some more experience, I think was really beneficial for them, and I think it'll for sure help them going in, for future cases that might come up at the school and give them more confidence to be able to handle some of that, on their own. Or,
expose them to a little bit more of those
so
types
it was
of investigations.
beneficial all the way around for sure.
Very cool. We have 2 permanent detectives.
Yep. So we have 2, we call them core detectives or permanent detectives, like you said. That's always traditionally how it's been here at Apple Valley, especially like I've been here in some capacity about 20 years now. And going back to when I first started here, we've always had 2 core detectives. The reason or thinking behind that is those folks are always going to be the constant. They're going to do this job till they retire. There's so much training and different stuff that goes into being a detective. We expose them to everything. For example, arson investigations. Like our 2 core detectives are the only ones that are trained in like arson investigations besides, work with the fire department, stuff like that. So it's really beneficial to have those 2, and they're kind of expected to be kind of the, I guess, pseudo leaders of the group, and they are naturally. I mean, they're usually ones that have spent a lot of time in investigations. They have high drive and motivation. So, and then on top of that, we have 2 3-year rotational detectives.
Okay.
Currently, that's Joel Pagachnik and Nicole Guadalajara. Both have had prior investigative experience, whether that was the 1-year detective spot or Nicole did a lot of just through her career so far has done a lot of investigations even prior to coming upstairs. So the benefit of the 3 years, those 3-year spots is it's rotating. It gives other people opportunities to come through. Plus they get kind of develop, they know what they're doing and get into a rhythm. And then we have a 1-year rotational position, which that's been the same since I've been here as well. I think that's super beneficial for someone it's made for someone who doesn't have any prior detective experience. And I think that's super beneficial for them and for the department. It gives people different opportunities, and then it gives that person a year to come up, learn, and then for them to see if they like it or not. Some people come up there and decide, you know what, this isn't for me. Hey, it's a year. They'll learn a lot, can take their experiences, go back to patrol or whatever they're going to do next.
Right.
Or some, that sets them on a career path, whether they maybe want to try to become a 3-year detective or a core investigator down the road. So
Sure.
I should mention the other kind of people that fall under my umbrella, the investigations umbrella, are our electronic crimes unit detective. Shane Klokanos has been in that position. Boy, and I think it's been...
I think it's like 7 or 8 years at this point, isn't it?
It's got. I was going to say closer to 10, so probably closer to maybe even 10. Yeah.
Yeah, because he was my primary FTO.
Okay.
He worked like one bid after that on the
Sure.
road, and then
That timeline makes sense.
Yep.
So that was kind of a pilot program where we have a drug task force here in Dakota County that Apple Valley is a part of. So we have a detective assigned to the drug task force as well. This electronic crimes unit was kind of the same premise, where you take a detective from participating agencies within Dakota County, and they have a facility. They actually have a brand nice new facility out in Evergrove Heights. That's great. At the time, though, they didn't have that. They worked out of Dakota County Sheriff's Office. Thought process being, with cell phones, computers, all that stuff, everything electronic now, for investigations that has so much evidentiary value that we need to have people assigned to that. At the thought process about 10 years ago was to put someone in that position to go to training and be able to analyze cell phones, computers, electronics, and have it be like a 5-year rotational position. Well, getting into it, we learned that there's so much training that goes into that, and it's continuing education, because things are ever changing with technology, that it's going to be it's almost like another core detective, if you will. Shane's been in that position for 10 years, and he may not want me to share his business on here, but I will anyway. But he's retiring next year in late 25. So we'll be looking for somebody to replace him in that role. And that'll be a big undertaking for whoever that is. And that'll probably be what they do for the remainder of their career. So in my time upstairs, I've learned so much about that position. It's invaluable. I mean, the number of phones that we take for evidentiary value and then end up doing search warrants on, and then having Shane as that resource, and also able to getting that evidence back in a very timely fashion. It's in 2024. It's just been invaluable in getting cases charged, people convicted, and things have just changed so much over the years. But that's just an invaluable piece that we have now.
Yeah. For me, that seems to be the biggest challenge, is getting people charged at this point.
Correct.
Because we have now set this precedent of having access to all of this data. If we don't have that data, but it's interesting because and this was before my time, but you guys used to have like mini VCR tapes that you would use for your squad cameras.
Yep.
And if the tape died in the middle of a DWI investigation, well, you still were able to get a conviction.
Correct.
But now, if driving conduct doesn't happen on squad camera, well, do we really have reasonable suspicion to make the traffic stop? You know, do we have text messages saying this? Do we have the geolocation data that puts the person in this? Is that accurate? Are you seeing that more and more? Or?
I would, yes. To answer your question, it's kind of like same thing with body cameras, right?
Right.
I mean, by policy, we have our body cameras on almost all the time, obviously.
Yeah. Last night, my partner on a crash, his body camera died in the middle of talking to one of the drivers, and he's like, well,
yeah, correct. And so it's like if it didn't, we're kind of living in an age, and I don't want to call it like the CSI effect necessarily, because that was a little bit before the
So you can't solve a crime in an hour with commercial breaks?
Correct. No.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay.
Or the DNA is always there. But to kind of answer your question from like an investigative standpoint, what I've seen, especially on the felony level, is we got to have electronic evidence, and then the big ones like DNA evidence. And I to a certain point, I understand that, because DNA evidence has become so much easier to obtain, and it's so much more prevalent. That kind of quote unquote CSI stuff has become so much more, prevalent. Like I'll give you an example, and I won't give names or the case number or anything, but like we recently had a case where there was a gun found in a backpack sitting in proximity to someone in a car. That person admitted to that the gun was theirs. They were carrying it in public without, so there's a crime there. Point being was, you rewind the clock back, I don't know, 10 years might even be too long. That person's probably going to get charged with that crime. Now even though the person admitted it and all this, they still want us to get DNA evidence off that. Just they want, because it's available, right? And it's so much easier to get. The only thing with that is when we send DNA to the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, BCA, to get analyzed, it usually takes 6 to 8 months to get that. So now you're delaying the process of that person getting charged, which is out of our hands, and that's not but it can be frustrating, especially when you're dealing with repeat offenders or people that you run in multiple times that have cases pending because some of that stuff takes so long.
Right.
And then the phone stuff, yes, it can be good and bad. Sometimes you don't find what you're looking for in someone's phone or electronics, and sometimes you do, and it just depends on what the crime is. There's so many different stuff, but I would say overall it's been a good thing. There's so many more, in my opinion, or like I said, what I've seen, so many more crimes charged and convictions we've been able to get because of the cell phone technology and what people save or don't realize shows their data or where they're at, their locations and phones, and so some of that's been really helpful too.
Yeah, because we don't want to give away our secrets.
That's
either.
right. Yeah.
Right. We don't want to talk about all the data that we can pull from.
That's true.
But there are a lot of little breadcrumbs in our CIA spy devices that we carry with us everywhere.
That's true. There really is, and you're right. I won't give away any trade secrets, but it's an ever evolving thing still with new technology. And I think the biggest thing too, not just what you carry on your phone, and I won't get into like what you should or shouldn't have as far as apps go, but social media is kind of within the cell phone. Most people use social media through their phone though, right? So what people's social media, it's not just the phone, it's the social media. So I'll just say that. So, and so we're actually not necessarily getting that stuff from the phone. We're getting it from their social media.
Open source intel's huge.
Right.
And once you get good at gathering that, man, a quick and easy enough. Like everybody knows about reverse Google image searches.
Right.
Like I can plug that in and Google will show me on the map where it is.
Right. I'm sure. And the thing I've learned too is obviously everybody knows the big ones. The TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat. I'm sure there's a couple more that I'm missing there, but there's so many more social media stuff or even just apps that people are using that we're learning about, that criminals, I should say, are using, that we learn about on.
Oh, absolutely.
That we learn about when we do this stuff, and then we have to work with that company. And so it's, like I said, it's ever evolving. So,
I was thinking about the guy that, that the PD's kind of been spun up about here recently. And some of the new places that we were looking for information on him.
Correct.
Because, when somebody says, like, I get on the dark web and purchase drugs, you're like, oh.
And another thing you just reminded me when you brought that up is within the last year and change now, we hired an analyst.
Yeah.
So, Ann Thielen, and that has been invaluable as well. We've tried to have her get out on a couple of ride-alongs here just to get her to know everybody better and kind of explain what she obviously sends out a weekly bulletin and stuff like that, but what's going on. But the networking and information that she has been invaluable to us, and she's kind of able to not only stay on top of that social media stuff and some of that open source stuff like you were talking about. Her access and relationships with other analysts has been invaluable. Right. So that's another thing that I guess falls under the investigations umbrella that has kind of been invaluable for us too.
So how's the position evolved since you took over 3 years ago?
Being able to stay on top of all the ever-changing ways to gather information and the electronic stuff and the changing case law, because so much has changed in 3 years with how we do things. And, like we touched on a little bit, what's needed to charge a case. And I think for me, after being up here 3 years and kind of developing relationships with the county attorney's office, city attorney's office, just kind of having this two-way street of trust that they know we're on top of it and like we're doing everything we can. We're going to investigate all of our cases to the best of our ability, and it's going to be done right. There's been a lot of change, just not only in personnel, but, like I said, just some case law stuff with, marijuana comes to mind. And the reason I bring up marijuana is prior to marijuana being legal, it wasn't, let's be honest, it's not the crime of the century. It wasn't.
Right.
Most of the stuff is misdemeanor stuff. The big change was officers being able to search a car, for example, based on the odor of marijuana and stuff like that. And so we were getting a lot of cases of either illegal narcotics or guns in cars. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't know about you, but I can't believe in 18 years how much that's changed with how many. When I was young in my career, I never saw guns on the street. Now It seems like, just from where I sit, we probably take one or two a weekend.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Not to scare the public here, but.
Right. In the last 3 years, we've taken in more guns than we did in the first 7 I was working here.
Yep, I would agree. And the stats show it.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Can't put my finger on as to exactly necessarily why. Probably a multitude of reasons. Yeah. But not to scare. I mean, most of them are off of traffic stops or.
Right. Yeah, there's not a lot of
shootings or.
No, it's not a lot of gunfighting and gun pointing incidents. What it is it's people improperly transporting them or not having the appropriate license to transport them the way that they are. That
Correct.
Sort of thing.
Correct.
They're not being used in the commission of a crime.
Correct.
But the way that they're carrying them is the crime.
Or they're, like I said, the big one was like the marijuana thing.
Right. Because then you have a gun and an illegal substance, and those two don't play well together in
Correct.
terms of the law. So.
Correct. And then the other thing, that's changed a lot, I guess, in 3 years is we've developed a pretty good relationship with some of our federal partners. Yeah. So, for example, Dylan Ordorf, who recently left, was our drug task force officer. He was doing stuff with the ATF on the federal level before he left, so that was pretty good. Yeah. It was nice to have nice to have that relationship. Recently, Detective Joe Pogachnik, and probably starting in October here, he's going to start working with the Postal Service on the federal level.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because that's a really interesting partnership.
It is.
And that was kind of like we've been talking a lot about cell phones and that sort of thing, but
sure.
His investigation was kind of like a low-tech crime, right?
Yeah, so that has been going on, long story, hopefully somewhat short. At Apple Valley Post Office now for, has it been like 2 years? We have had numerous thefts and frauds coming out of there, mostly related to checks. So checks that are put in the mail are being stolen and then cashed, obviously forged. A lot of stuff's been going on. Joel has been working hard on that case. There's a lot of moving parts. It's kind of I can't share too much,
right.
But it's a more sophisticated operation than you kind of think.
Mm-hmm.
During the course of that investigation, he was kind of roped in the federal, not just the post office itself, but the post office investigators on the federal level, and they've been working together on that. So they approached us a few months ago with a TFO program. Basically, the feds that work here for the Postal Service in the Minneapolis area are starting kind of a task force, and they want local law enforcement to partner with them. And they're just starting up this program, and one of their first pick that they wanted to have work with them was Joel. So we kind of worked through that with administration in the city, and so Joel's going to it's a new program, so we're going to kind of see where it goes. And I think the most interesting thing, those investigations can kind of go anywhere. And one of the post office agents said to us in a meeting, he's like, there's so much stuff that connects to the post office. We have no limit on what we can investigate. It was just kind of interesting because you think about mailing. I mean, a lot of stuff does go through the mail. You talk about drugs, obviously, forged check, all this kind of stuff they're investigating. So I think it's a pretty cool opportunity for Joel to go do some different stuff. So anyway, with it being a new program, we're going to go in October here. He's going to start kind of partnering with them maybe 1 or 2 days a week to see how it goes, and then we'll kind of see if that becomes a full-time thing down the line and kind of see where that goes. So that's going to be an interesting transition here and see what happens.
Are they going to give him a mail truck for a take-home squad?
We've already made plenty of jokes about that.
Good.
We've had him take a couple pictures in mail trucks to show him what his new work vehicle is, but yeah, we'll see. So that, I think, in the end, this is going to give him more access, and they're going to really buckle down on this case they've been investigating for 2 years. And I'll just say this: it's going to take him out of state. So, because it's this case that they're working, it goes to a couple different states here. So it is actually obviously a federal thing. Then, anytime you're talking post office, it's obviously federal. But when you're talking about crossing state lines, it's a little more serious than that. So, hopefully, within the next few months, we can bring that case to a resolution.
Yeah. Well, this is kind of a cool segue because this really gets into how much your investigators, the work that they do, contributes to not just our city, but the surrounding communities as well.
Right. I think there's a lot of cases too there, whether it's like a theft ring, like there's this group of individuals that are going around and, let's just say, for example, hitting Best Buys or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
There's our investigators work with not only federal, but then obviously detectives from other agencies, and so on all kinds of different cases. So yeah, they get to know a lot of different people and get a lot of different connections. And that takes a while to obtain when you're working up there. So yeah, they do a great job of partnering with different agencies, like whether it be federal, local, whatever.
Yeah. How do you determine who gets those caseloads, right? Because like for Joel, was it just luck of the draw that he got the post office one and he kind of crushed it, knocked it out of the park, so to speak? Guadalajara could have gotten that one, potentially. How do you guys determine who takes what cases?
That's a good question. We expect all our detectives to kind of, I guess the word would be, well-rounded.
Yeah.
They know how to handle a big fraud case because, trust me, from going back and doing those, I don't like doing those myself. So they're just too confusing and it's so much work and not a lot of fun and numbers. We expect them to know how to handle persons crimes, whether it be, sexual assaults, domestic assaults, child protection cases, all that kind of stuff. So we want them to be well-rounded, but having said that, they all kind of develop their niches.
Yeah.
So they all have things they like doing more than the other, that's for sure. So, for example, Joel is like the one up there that likes doing fraud cases. That's just how his mind works, and he's good at it. He's developed his niche in that role. Core detectives, like I said earlier, they kind of expect them to do everything. Currently, like Tara Becker, one of our core detectives, she really enjoys and is good at doing persons crimes. She's tenacious with that and does a great, not that they all don't, but she enjoys doing that more. Joel, Horzuk kind of likes doing, his kind of thing, and is kind of some of the stuff that comes in from the BCA, whether it be child protection or child pornography cases. That's a lot of red tape and work too, so he's kind of developed his niche with that. Guadalajara really likes doing persons cases as well, and is good at that, and so they all kind of develop niches, and so all things being equal, I try to kind of give them cases that they are going to sink their teeth into, but they all get cases they probably don't necessarily want either.
So you assign them the cases?
Yeah, and I assign all the cases that come in. And there's a few factors that go into it. What's their current caseload?
Yeah.
What are they working on right now? Are they working on another big case right now that they just don't have time to make this one a priority? Our detectives are usually carrying between 10 and 20 cases.
Wow.
So, it really depends. And some of them, that number can be deceiving at times because they've sent something to the BCA and they can't do anything with it for 6 months till that comes back. However, they might have a lot going on right now and have to be here doing a child protection interview one day and then doing something else. And then the other thing is honest. So kind of the general rule of thumb is the way we do things upstairs is our detectives rotate being on call each week.
Yep.
So usually when a case comes in that week, no matter what it is, that detective who's on call usually takes that case. Even if they're not called in for it, it comes to me on a Monday or Tuesday or whatever.
Yep.
If they are getting the bad luck of the draw and 5 cases come in that week, I'm not giving all 5 cases to that. So to answer your question in a long way, it's kind of what their caseload is, what they're currently working on, what their interest level or what I know that they would like to do this case. And then kind of, are they on call? Or, another factor is, are they going on vacation? So I know something might need to be done on this particular case the next week or two, and that detective is going to be on vacation next week. So there's a few different factors, and that's one thing that I learned, kind of had to get my pulse on when I first started up there, was I can look at the spreadsheet and see all the cases they have, but just kind of that nuance was something I had to learn.
Yeah, deciphering.
Yeah.
You need like a decoder ring.
Yeah, exactly. and for me too, never having done investigations myself, we were kind of short-staffed for about a year there when I started. I actually kind of more towards the middle, not only on patrol and investigations kind of whole, and now we're caught up, thankfully, for the most part.
Yeah.
I was doing a lot of investigations myself. Now, I would only assign myself ones I knew I could solve.
like any good boss would,
that's right? Right. And the easier ones.
My clearance rate is phenomenal.
My clearance rate is 100%. But it was good for me to kind of work through. I mean, all joking aside, it was good for me to work through a lot of those, because I learned a lot from those guys.
Absolutely.
How to take phones, properly write warrants for phones, how to look through the data, all that kind of stuff. So, yes, I didn't take anything too complex. Let's not get crazy here, but I did do a number of different cases, which was good for me.
Yeah.
Not only to kind of see what they go through with their cases, but then to hopefully, like I said before, bring back to patrol just to kind of help.
Right.
Some of those folks go, hey, you need to ask this question on this type of call, and here's why. So,
which I've gotten data back for a cell phone a couple of times, and trying to decipher that is miserable.
It is. It's a goofy.
The way it gets kicked back to you, it's almost like you need a coding degree to understand it.
Yeah, and it's confusing, and the more you do it and look through it, the easier it gets. But as someone who writes a warrant and then gets a cell phone back, I remember the first time I looked at one and I was like, okay, yeah. Luckily for me, I have people in the hallway that I can walk down to and say, hey, come help me with this.
Right.
Whereas general patrol, especially if someone's working nights or whatever.
Yeah.
Has to try to decipher some of that themselves and ask for help from people that have done it before. But yeah, some of that technology stuff is just crazy.
Yeah. I know we haven't talked much about Dave Geisbers, and that guy, I mean, he is unbelievably smart. He's a huge help in terms of like on our union board, and we had our meeting last week, and you could tell just how dialed in he is on some of the
absolutely
some of the most mundane stuff, because like most of that stuff, for me, it's like gone, data dumped before we were done having the conversation.
Right.
But like he is just a sponge absorbing all of that. And I got to imagine his work ethic and how he performs his duties up there is the exact same.
100%. He's the best report writer I've ever seen, honestly. Like he writes the most detailed, clear, concise reports. Like we touched on the 1-year position earlier, and that's meant to be, kind of a learning position for someone that's never been in it before, which was true for Dave when he came up. The other thing with Dave is what's so impressive about him is he's only been a cop like 3 or 4 years. I mean, I know he was in dispatch before that.
Right.
But if you were to sit and have a conversation with Dave, you would think he'd been a cop for like 20 years because of all the knowledge he has. And that's another thing, when you talk about assigning cases that we just talked about, typically speaking, the 1 year doesn't get too complex cases. We don't want to. I haven't hesitated for 1 second to give him anything because he'll sink his teeth into anything.
Yeah.
And he asks for help, but he doesn't really need to very often because he's so smart and good at his job and detail-oriented, and that group's going to miss him next year when he goes back. No, I'm sure. I don't know. We'll see who puts in. We have a few talented people that I think will do a great job next year up in the 1 year investigative rotation position, but he has definitely been, like, he's hit the ground running. I think for Dave, the sky's the limit, whatever he wants to do with his career, whether he wants to be a sergeant someday or do investigations or whatever. He's just a smart, driven, detail-oriented person. Yeah. So it's been great. It's just been really easy having him up here. So as far as anything else, I think we kind of touched on the people that I kind of work with on a day-to-day basis, kind of some of that. The only other change we've kind of made in the last year that I think is worth mentioning is our PEO program, Physical Evidence Officer program.
Yeah.
So, traditionally speaking, the way things would work in the past, let's say we had a burglary, a dental office in town was broken into in the middle of the night. Usually our on-call detective would have to come in and process like a scene like that, try to take fingerprints, DNA, whatever. In the last year, we've have PEO, physical evidence officer program where we've sent people from. Now, don't get me wrong, all the detectives are trained in crime scene stuff, but now we have people from different areas of the PD, whether it be patrol, CIU, school resource officers, whatever, that can do those things, and that's been great because it's taken a little bit of a burden off the detective having to come in and process a scene, and not just in the middle of the night, like even right now on a Tuesday morning, they don't have to leave what they're doing to go process a stolen car or something like that. Yeah. We have so many people that are trained to do that now, and we have a squad that's dedicated to that. So with all of the equipment and stuff they need to be able to do that. So that's still in its infancy stages, if you will, within the police department. We have, I think it's 7 or 8 different officers trained, and now we're having a couple more here go in November, but I'd like to get to a point where we have maybe 15 officers trained to do it. So, and honestly, like I said earlier, knock on wood, we haven't had too many crazy cases in the last few months where we've had like a big crime scene, if you will. But the thought process is on some of these cases is to have those physical evidence officers work with a detective on a case, like some whatever you want to use for your imagination for a crime scene. But that hasn't kind of come to fruition yet. But it's like I said, sooner than later. So that's kind of been another big good change that we've done kind of in the past year.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. It slips my mind pretty regularly. Yeah. And I'm thankful that we have that program, because if you were to tell me to go swab that door for DNA, I'd probably look at you like a deer in headlights and go, I haven't done this since FTO.
Right. And to your point, though, you and I was the same way. Like, I can't think of more than like 2 or 3 times maybe when I was on patrol that I did that. But to your point now, I see, just reading all the reports I see, we have more officers doing some of that stuff on their own. They don't need to necessarily be a PEO to swab for DNA. It's kind of more ingrained. It's kind of like the overall theme about what we talked about. How more data. Okay. And to their credit, they know how to do it. Whereas, like I said, 10 years ago, that wasn't a thing.
Even Wolf, when I was on FTO with him, and we took a burglary report over in 30 area, and he's like, well, if you want, we can go get the fingerprint dust and like get this room really dirty.
Yeah, right.
It's like, okay.
Yeah.
And
I would say, I don't know, I can't put a percentage on it, but most of the stuff is DNA now. It's not, I mean, our PEOs aren't really doing fingerprint stuff. That's pretty rare. Touch DNA is just everywhere. It's easy to obtain. I think the very underrated skill that PEOs bring to our picture taking. I mean, it sounds trivial, but I'm not saying our patrol officers are bad by any means. We have our iPhones, which take great pictures, but having a nice camera, understanding the principles of photography, that kind of stuff, obviously. So, like, those folks doing that photography stuff is I think, because you have a case that ever is going to go to a jury, right? And you want to have really good scene photos. Yeah. And so people that are on a jury can look at those and understand and kind of put that scene together in their mind.
Right.
I think that's another invaluable piece that those guys do that seems like an underrated or not important skill, but I find it really important.
Yeah, absolutely. I think just like we had a motorcycle crash last night.
Sure.
Right. One of the more senior officers out there grabbed photos.
Yep.
And I was like, well, that's great, because that is an invaluable piece of information for the insurance companies or for anybody down the road, right, determining if this person failed duty to drive with due care, right, and convicting him of that. Without those pictures, it's kind of hard to prove one way or the other.
Right. And like we said earlier, everything's on body camera now, right? But to watch a body camera is a lot different than just having good scene photos that you can look at and dissect.
And for some people, you need Dramamine to watch the body cameras because they can't stand still.
Yeah. Or their hands are passing in front of it or something gets, so I think good scene photos are always important.
Yeah. Cool. Let's talk about you. You're a heck of an athlete,
Oh, thank you.
right? I mean,
I don't know what heck I used to be, maybe.
well, I think you still are. Came out of retirement to play in that Ballin and DC
I did.
basketball tournament. Came out and knocked down a couple of threes.
Maybe one or two, yeah.
Yeah, you played the lion's share of minutes.
I was sore.
But you've also played some high-level softball,
Yeah,
right?
Yep.
Because you played with the Lawmen.
I still do, yeah.
You still do,
Mhm.
okay. And you guys have traveled the country to do that.
Yep. Yeah, for me, I was an athlete growing up, played baseball in college, actually, so I've always been an athlete. And that's kind of where my kind of love or understanding of importance of physical fitness obviously came from.
Yeah.
So for me, after graduating college and being done with baseball and then kind of having to fill that void, if you will, of the competitiveness and all that and just enjoying being active and all that, I was introduced to softball as a young officer. And I kind of thought at the time it was like really competitive slow pitch softball. Like it seems, everyone, I always thought of softball as a, beer drinking, have fun with your buddies kind of thing, which it still is, don't get me wrong. But I was introduced and kind of recruited to play by a couple of St. Paul officers for this Minnesota Lawmen softball team, which typically we do 3 tournaments a year. It's made up of officers from agencies from all over the state. So
Sure.
we have about a roster of about, 15 or so. Having said that, everyone's got families, work. They can always make every tournament, so that's kind of why.
Yeah.
So for me, I just realized the other day I'm going on year 17 now. So
Wow.
I'm still playing. So we travel usually 3 times a year out of state to play against other law enforcement teams. So it's great. It's, as you can imagine, a lot of type A police officer personalities that
Sure.
that show up, but you kind of get to know what's cool about it is kind of the networking. So you're playing officers from New York, California, Texas.
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool. It's been a pretty cool experience. I'm glad I've done it, and I've developed a lot of good relationships with officers from around the state here too that I've known for years now. So we're actually going to Texas this week. So
Very cool.
in the Dallas area. So, and then usually the Police World Series is in Vegas every year in October. So Vegas isn't the worst place in the world to go hang out in October. So that's it's fun, it's competitive, it's a great complex. So that's my hobby outlet, if you will, and kind of is able to kind of get that, I can get that competitive, thing keeps me
Yeah.
going.
And you also coach.
I do. I coach my kids. So we got 2 kids in sports that play pretty much everything. So baseball, football, softball, basketball. So, and like I said earlier, I've really used this opportunity in investigations to, Monday through Friday, weekends off, because they play travel sports. So being able to coach them has been a lot of fun, in different stuff and also be at their stuff all the time,
Right.
not having to work, a night shift or an afternoon shift or a weekend or, whatever, and having to take it off or whatever. So, but the good thing is when I go back to patrol here, I'll have a lot more seniority. So I'll be able to, that's another thing that's changed, if you will, in 3 years. Like I went from kind of middle in the pack of seniority, but we had so many sergeant retirements in the last 3 years.
Yeah.
I'm actually going to be the top in patrol on seniority when I go back. So,
Really?
which will be cool. So I'll have to pick up my shift and all that kind of stuff. So
I'm just trying to think of the seniority roster right now.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's
well,
you
with Dave Verdon retiring this week, he was one ahead of me, but
Yeah.
it goes Cheetah then me. so
Man.
with Cheetah staying in CIU, I'll be because in the 3 years I've been up there, Jason Weishar, Pete Matos, Jeff. Well, and then obviously the movement with like the chief retiring, Chief Rexical retiring, and then Nick Francis getting promoted, and then Greg getting promoted, and then Spillers. So it's some of that retirement's going up and down. So yeah, it's a lot of changes in 3 years. So
man, I can't believe there was that much movement in 3 years. I mean, I can.
Yeah.
I can, because I don't know. I actually bid number 5 on the patrol.
Yeah,
schedule at
that's
this
which is
point.
wild,
So
right?
at 10 years on,
Yeah.
it's like I don't know what happened. I used to have a pretty great spot where I could pick my shift and pick the people I work with, and now I pick my shift and hope that the right people fill in behind.
Right. You're almost I didn't think of it that way. You can pick whatever shift you want, but then you're kind of at mercy of whatever happens after that.
Right. Yeah. So it's interesting, and like you said, with the young patrol crew that we've got,
Yeah.
I think it's 50% have less than 5 years experience.
Correct.
That is a young crew.
And like I said, I'm looking more forward to seeing how they work and just kind of getting to know them more as people. Because I just, when you're on patrol, you're so plugged into everyone. And I mean, you don't work with everybody on every shift all the time, but you see them at the garage every day or, whatever. I just at investigations, you're a little bit more on an island with some of that stuff. So I'm kind of looking forward to just getting to.
Yeah, because you're only seeing them through a lens.
Yeah, exactly.
Through that investigative lens versus being on the road.
Or not seeing them very often or just not really knowing who they are as people. So
Vegas, obviously, in October is a great place to play softball. What's your favorite place that you've played softball so far?
Ooh, good question. I mean, Vegas, you can't. That's the easy answer. You can't beat because the fields, the atmosphere, the weather is just perfect. I'm not actually looking forward to going. Well, Texas is going to be much better than last year. This Texas tournament that we go to I think we've been going to it 5 years in a row now. It's always the weekend after Labor Day.
Okay.
Last year, I'm not exaggerating this, it was 110 degrees. And that was the most miserable I've ever been in my life playing softball. It was just, it's too hot, right? It's
not a cloud in the sky.
No, just miserable. Yeah. The forecast says 90, so that'll feel like but
it's a dry heat.
Yeah, it's dry heat. They Texas, they always say. Sure. 110 is 110. That was bad.
Right. No matter what, it's just.
I've been fortunate. I think the best one I've ever been to was 2011. It was New York. So,
wow.
Yeah, we got to go to New York. So I had never been to New York in my life. So me and my wife took that opportunity to go out, not only play softball, but do all the sightseeing stuff.
Yeah.
And all the typical New York stuff you would go do.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that would be the one that sticks out probably the most. Otherwise, I mean, I've been fortunate to go to Florida, Jacksonville, West Palm Beach, some really cool, Virginia Beach, really cool spots. California, I've been to Palm Springs, is beautiful if you've ever been there. So, and then there's some that you kind of remember for the softball more than forever. They had a tournament in Dayton, Ohio. So, I mean,
that's a beautiful city.
Yeah, just beautiful. I mean, hey,
it's a tourist destination.
But hey, I remember more of the good times like playing softball than I do like the city, if you will.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Actually, Dayton, Ohio does actually hold a place in my heart because I've had some really fun times with good people there. So
did you see Jesus of the Lake when you were out there?
I did not.
Okay, I didn't. There's a big statue. It's called Jesus of the Lake, and I think it's Church of the Rock.
Sure.
Right out, kind of near Dayton. It's in Monroe, Ohio, but it's right along the highway, and you can't miss it. It's like a 65-foot tall statue.
I'm sure I would have, I would have seen it, but I did not.
always have to ask because the first time I saw it, I was like, what is happening here?
Yep. I have not. So that's a good question. So I've, as I sit here and reflect on it, I've been a lot of different places, and it's something as silly as slow pitch softball has kind of afforded me a lot of different opportunities.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, but it's given you the opportunity then to continue that competitive streak.
Absolutely.
It's given you some other opportunities to coach as well because you coach your daughter's team. Mm-hmm. And just a constant lifelong learner.
Yep.
So, and which you're going to, word on the street is you're going to Northwestern Staff and Command School.
That is correct. So me and Adam Keeler are going here. It starts, let's see, they're about 3 weeks.
Okay.
Monday the 23rd.
And that'll be your full-time job.
That'll be my full-time job for 9-10 weeks. Looking forward to it. Goes through the beginning of December. I'm looking forward to it in terms of kind of just doing something different. You know, just kind of focusing on something. And I know it's going to be a lot of work, though. So that's the other side of that. Yeah. So we'll see. Yeah.
Well, Adam, I appreciate you taking the time today.
You got it.
Anything else you want to throw out there for
No,
thanks
for having me. I'm hoping, can get some insight kind of how investigations work and stuff around here and kind of the people behind it. So thank you.
Yeah. Yep. Well, we look forward to having you back from Northwestern Staff Command, getting back on the road. So thanks everybody for tuning in again. We'll catch you next time.
Hey folks, we want this to be engaging for you as well, so please drop a comment wherever you follow us on social media. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share to this podcast. Tell your friends, tell your family. We'd like to get this out to as many people as possible. We want people to know who the police officers of Apple Valley are. If you have questions or comments, something you'd like to hear about, reach out to us. Let us know. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to address some of those topics that you guys have questions about as well. We look forward to having you back next time.